we've got a lot to get through. Let's talk a bit about. Let's move on to Iran a little bit. The U.S. So we're seeing some progress. Apparently, the U.S. had opened the negotiations, said that no way you're not going to be allowed to enrich at all. Now the reports are, well, actually, you can enrich a little bit, somewhat. Now we're, it's kind of like the old joke about the prostitute. Like now we're just negotiating the price, right?
Yeah.
So now we're just negotiating the enrichment percentages. And at the same time, Iran is saying, you're not asking for complete removal of all sanctions, although I'm sure that's what they would like, but they're asking for sanctions relief, which I think is obviously an extremely reasonable ask, considering sanctions should be illegal. It looks like something might get done.
Here's the sticking point. The sticking point is the actual enrichment. So the Iranians want to enrich uranium, which is their right. Every country that has the ability is enriching uranium. They used to enrich it up to 35%. Now they enrich it up to 67%. It needs to be like 95 to 97% to be weapons grade. They haven't done that. So on the one hand, you have the Iranians saying, we want to enrich uranium. On the other hand, you have the Trump administration saying several different things. First, they said no enrichment whatsoever. Then they said, you can enrich, but only up to 35%. Then they said, no, you can enrich up to 67%, but you have to leave it in another country. Let's put it in the United Arab Emirates. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of days ago, the White House said, well, they can enrich the uranium, but so can the Saudis, the Kuwaitis, the Qataris, whoever else wants to, the Emiratis, and then we put all of it in Oman. And then the Omaners are like, wait a minute, we don't want any of this in uranium in Oman. We never offered that. Oh, okay, we'll put it in the United Arab Emirates. And then the Iranians are like, no, we rejected that a month ago. Let's move on. We're not going to enrich it to weapons grade, but we have the right to enrich it for nuclear power. It's our uranium. And that's where they're stuck. Now, my guess is because the U.S. position changes literally weekly, that means that it's Trump making the call. And I think if Trump allows the U.S. delegation and the experts on these issues, the DOE people, Department of Energy people, allows them to figure out what's in the best interests of the United States from a security perspective, I bet we could come to an agreement. I bet we can.
Let them do their job.
Let them do their job. And I have to, yet again, compliment the Iranians on this, that they've been very level-headed. We're seeing the Iranian people protesting the fact that the Iranian government has been so patient. That's amazing to me. Just amazing.
Well, they have been. Now, let me ask you about the Iranian. What do you think? What's your assessment of what the Iranians are up to? You mentioned that they're enriching above the level required for nuclear energy.
Yes.
They're moving toward, but have not really gotten close to the level necessary for weapons grade. So is this, I see it as, maybe there's more than two possibilities. I see it as one of two things. This is a way for the Iranians to pressure the Americans and say, shit or get off the pot, or we're going to 95%, fuck you.
Right.
Or they literally are lying and they're saying we're going for the nuclear weapons program.
Or they're doing this just in case the Israelis pull a fast one and start bombing them, that they can get up to 95% far more quickly than they could from 35%.
Because if you're Iran, Israel is your number one, more than the U.S., existential threat. Israel has
absolutely right.
They're after you. They have a hard on for you. They want you gone.
I think that is it right there. It's an existential threat. It's one that I think most Americans don't fully understand. And then conversely, it wasn't lost on the Israelis that those slow motion drones that the Iranians sent, 7 of them actually made it through the Iron Dome.
Yeah, and that's after the warnings and the deliberate.
Yeah, when they said, "Oh, by the way, we're sending these drones. We're going to bomb you. They're not going to get there for 6 hours." And the Israelis put up the Iron Dome. They're like, "Okay, here come the drones." And then 7 of them still got through.
I mean, presumably, technicians on the IDF have been working to fix those problems.
Yes.
But, I mean, my father, who was an aeronautical engineer, explained missile systems, right? There's missiles, there's anti-missile missiles, there's
right.
anti-missile systems.
Crazy.
Nothing's foolproof. I mean, you don't really know until you're at war. Like one of my favorite factoids that he said is, we don't know if on Doomsday, those guys go in and turn those 2 keys. We don't know how many of them will launch. We don't know how many of them the telemetry will guide them to their destinations. We don't know how many of those will detonate. We don't know because we can't test them. It's like building a car in your driveway, but you don't get to start it.
My dad used to tell me this story when I was a little kid. My dad was in the Army, was drafted in like 1959, right? He hated every second that he was in the military. And he ended up being stationed at Fort Knox, but at first he was at Fort Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. It's in central Pennsylvania, which is all farmland and mountains. So he said that one morning, early, like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, these alarms went off. This voice over the loudspeaker kept saying, "This is not a drill. This is not a drill." Everybody jumped into the Jeeps. They drove out into this farmland. And then he said, like watching a movie, the earth just lifted up and moved aside, and these missiles came out of the ground in central Pennsylvania. And then they said, this was a drill after all. The missiles went back in. The ground closed back up. And he said he would never forget it as long as he lived.
So chilling.
Yeah, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. We just don't know it.
Thousands.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, honestly, they should be eliminated. I mean, really. I mean,
you're right. We don't know if they'll launch. And if they don't launch, do they explode in place?
Right.
We don't know. They haven't been tested.
Although probably not, right? I mean,
yeah.
Well, they could, but I mean, probably not because of the detonation thing. People don't really understand. Like if you bombed an ICBM in place, the most that it does is create like a dirty bomb. It doesn't. You don't get a mushroom cloud.
Right.
The detonator hasn't been activated.
Right.
It's not like blowing up a conventional bomb, a dumb bomb. No. That makes.
I went out to Vandenberg Air Force Base once to take a missile course when I was with the CIA. I didn't know anything about missiles. The White House wanted a paper on the Iraqi missile system leadership. And so I had to go get smart on missiles. So I went out to Vandenberg Air Force Base, and I just happened to get there at one of the 6 times a year where they did a launch. They actually launched an ICBM. And it was a beautiful thing to behold. It's nighttime and the thing is glowing, and then it takes off at this fantastic speed. It landed in the water outside of Tahiti 20 minutes later. 20 minutes to go from California to Tahiti. Incredible.
Oh, it's incredible. Right. No. Yeah, the military has stuff that we just don't understand.
No, and this is the old technology. This is the technology we developed in the 50s and 60s that we're still using.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the I'm sure this has been somewhat upgraded, but as I think it was like 15 years ago, 60 Minutes did an expose about how at the bottom of the nuclear missile silos, the crews in many cases were still running computers with the big floppy disks, the big, I guess they were 8 inches or 9 inches. I forget the size of those.
I remember
you and I remember those.
Oh,
I mean, those were before the mini disc that,
Yeah.
And they were, they have the old codes. And I mean, it's crazy how old fashioned that stuff is. It's really, really antiquated.
Unbelievable.
Well, I mean, I hope so. What do you think? Do you think they're going to do you think we're going to get a deal?
I actually do. I do think we're going to get a deal. I don't think we're so terribly far apart. And
Bibi's going to be pissed.
He's going to be very pissed.
That might be a feature for Trump, not a bug.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to be very pissed. And I think Trump's going to be perfectly fine with that. Trump has been walking this tightrope the last month or so where he is staunchly pro-Israel, but he hates Bibi Netanyahu. And I don't think he cares what this does to Bibi Netanyahu. But I think that, well, we've said a million times, he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. It's going to be good for trade. He will have been the only president who could come to an actual agreement with the Iranians that both parties will approve of. And I think that deep down, Trump understands, like previous presidents didn't understand, that sanctions just don't work. They just don't work.
I mean, look at Russia. I think sanctions are like the best thing that ever happened to them.
That's right.
They now have a brand new, economic and military alliance with China.
China
dreamed of, that they went to war with.
That's right.
On more than one occasion.
Yes.
They, and BRICS came out of that. The R is Russia in BRICS.
That's right.
I mean, it's a huge thing. Wow. Well, let's hope so. What do you think the deal will look like?
Well, I think it's going to be baby steps. We're not going to see an announcement like we did with Syria, where he just on a lark opens his mouth and says, all sanctions are lifted. And there's going to be plenty of pushback from the Democrats, pushback from the Treasury Department, probably some pushback from the military, both civilian and military DoD sides. But I think that what the Iranians are interested in is, number one, spare parts, right? Especially spare parts for the oil industry. If they can get spare parts for their American jets, they want to do that too. Remember,
from the Shah.
They inherited all from the Shah.
What, F-111?
F-14s, F-111s, Boeing 707s. They need parts. They also need to,
a great market, but they'd rather get them legitimately.
That's right. And they need to dredge their harbors. They have trouble getting oil out because they haven't had the technical wherewithal to dredge their harbors. I think that's really what they're interested in.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens there.